namaste. Namaste, one and all. Namaste and hello to people in India, people in the US. Our guest today is at Fort Worth in Texas, in North Texas, Professor Antoinette DeNapoli. And she's joining all the way from Fort Worth. And she'll be discussing her innovative new work about female gurus, Hindu gurus. And before we begin, I would like to read her bio. Professor Antoinette DeNapoli is a specialist in South Asian Hinduism with a focus on asceticism, gender, sexuality, embodiment, authority, modernity, and performance. She also conducts ethnographic research on contemporary South Asian Hindu communities centered around the leadership of female gurus and ascetics, contemporary Hindu feminisms, and contemporary female traditions of devotional asceticism and mysticism in North India. I remember from last when I spoke with her, I think she went to my hometown of Jodhpur in Rajasthan long back, but she'll tell us more. Her first book, Real Sadhus Sing to God, Gender Asceticism and Vernacular Religion in Rajasthan, there you go, is published with Oxford University Press. And her next book, entitled Female Gurus and Grassroots Feminism, The Modern Struggle for Gender Equality in South Asian Hinduism, is underway with Oxford University Press. She's the editor of and contributor to a special journal issue entitled Gurus, Priestesses, Saints, Mediums, and Yoginis. Wow, that's a wide panorama. Holy Women as Influencers in Hindu Culture with Dr. June McDaniel, which is forthcoming in Religions. Dr. DeNapoli is an associate professor, now a full professor of religions and South Asian religions in the religion department at Texas Christian University, Fort Worth, Texas, USA. Professor DeNapoli, please take it away. All yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Pankaj Jain, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share my research with Flame University and with the broader community. So this kind of platform and venue for being able to do more public-facing scholarship is really important to me. So thank you so much. So what I'm going to do now, colleagues, is share my screen. And can you see the screen?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, excellent. So our talk today should go for about 45 minutes. And if there's anything that's unclear or you cannot hear me, please do let me know. So we will now begin. So this presentation examines the emergent leadership of two female gurus in South Asia who have declared their status as Shankaracharyas, or heads of monastic institutions, based on revelatory experiences. They have done this to change the patriarchal or akhara monastic culture and challenge entrenched ideas of women's inferiority in Hindu monastic society. This exploration of the guru's experiences through analysis of their personal narratives and devotional teachings illuminates how new forms of religious authority are developing in South Asia. As I shall show, the gurus proclaim Hindu truths that reverse the religiously sanctioned patriarchal order based on their revelations. Though charisma may be the means for mediating new knowledge, I am concerned with how charisma, in the context of personal revelatory experience, acts as a source of religious power for the gurus by moving and inspiring them to challenge and confound traditional absolute gender power hierarchies. So this question frames our discussion of the gurus' teachings, practices, and lives. Their leadership has arisen from collective grassroots efforts, and it has generated a groundswell of support for their quest to empower female ascetics called sadhus with their equal rights. Although the gurus serve as spiritual leaders for their communities, they are also renouncers. The Indic language term used to represent this class of female religious practitioners is sannyasini, Apart from sannyasini, other terms used by the gurus to denote their renunciant status include sadhu, which is the gendered masculine term for ascetic, or sadhvi, female ascetic, and sant, holy person. Sadhus follow an uncommon way of life called renunciation or sannyas. As sadhus, the gurus have taken ritual vows of voluntary poverty, simplicity, and celibacy, dedicating themselves to serving humanity and worshiping the divine. By combining ethnographic data and a gender study-centered analysis of their narratives and teachings, I shall investigate the role and impact of gendered charismatic authority on modern women's monastic lives. My research relies on extensive ethnographic fieldwork conducted with the guru Trikalbhavanta Saraswati, hereafter Mataji, and her community over the course of 4 trips to India between 2014 and 2019. In addition to participant observation at Mataji's monastic center in North India, my methodology involved using digital, audio, and video recordings to conduct individual and focus group interviews with Mataji and her followers. I collected Mataji's oral history, and I documented her teachings and rituals. I was present when these recordings took place, either in person or on a social media platform. These platforms provided an archival trove of resources, including videos of Mataji giving talks, interviews, providing social commentary, and performing rituals at her temple and elsewhere, such as the Kumbh Melas. Now, analysis of the teachings and practices of the other guru, Sadhvi Hemanandgiri, whom I shall refer to hereafter as Swamini, draws upon the information obtained through social media platforms where her devotees uploaded videos of her interviews, teachings, and song and ritual performances. In more than 15 videos, Swamini shares her knowledge with people in India, Nepal, Mauritius, and Hungary. As Swamini's status as a female Shankaracharya was announced in late 2018 from Nepal, I utilized her archived online videos, primarily YouTube, as primary data. Importantly, the Guru's self-declarations as Shankaracharyas profoundly break the conventional patriarchal mold for the type of Guru women can be and the kind of authorized religious power they can have in this male-dominated role. Thus, I argue that the Gurus invoke charismatic authority by emphasizing the immediacy of the personal realization of the divine and the potency of religious emotions as sources of revelation. By performing these revelations, they construct an alternative ways of practicing Hinduism, defined around modernist ideals such as gender equality, inclusion, and women's and human rights. Moreover, they promote the normalization of women's institutional leadership at the pinnacle of the monastic hierarchy. For context, Mataji, whom you see on the left, the viewer's left, lives in Prayagraj, Uttar Pradesh. Born in 1965 in Mirzapur, she comes from a lower middle class family of peanut farmers in a subordinated caste. She is one of 4 siblings and the 3rd child of her parents. Intelligent, keenly self-aware, and impatient with small talk, Mataji has a commanding presence and is purposeful in her interactions. From our first meeting in 2014, I learned that she expects people to say what they mean and mean what they say. Her daily routine consists of waking at 4 a.m., worshiping the temple deities, meditating, doing postural yoga for an hour, then reading the daily newspaper while having her breakfast of seasonal fruit and milk. She spends the rest of the day with her devotees at the ashram or at their homes, fundraising to build other centers in India and organizing in-house and outreach public events in which she connects women's rights to Hindu teachings. Mataji is confident, but not arrogant, by which I mean she uses the knowledge that she has acquired through experience to correct others. As she has faced personal hardship, for self-protection, Mataji has built a tough exterior. She stands up for her rights and rarely suffers fools. In 2000, at the age of 35 years, Mataji left her life as a housewife for good and became a sadhu. Her husband and son objected, but she ignored them and pursued a religious path. She took initiation, Diksha, in Prayagraj from a male guru of the Saraswati order of the Dashanami sect. Her Diksha occurred at midnight on the banks of the Ganges River. After relocating to an ashram near the Triveni Sangam in Prayagraj, where the Ganges, Yamuna, and subterranean Saraswati rivers form a confluence, Mataji separated from her spouse and sent her children to live with her relatives. However, she provided for them financially until they started college. Mataji maintains contact with her daughter, but not with her son or former spouse. As a sadhu, Mataji applied her leadership training from an NGO in Benares, where she worked, to the religious field, immersing herself in grassroots activism with poor urban women and children and women survivors of domestic abuse. In 2004, she founded an NGO named the Sri Gayatri Mata Gyan Mahayagya Samiti. In 2014, she founded a female ascetic order named Patriarchal, which I have translated as Society of the Freebirds. Currently, Mataji heads a monastic center or mutt in Prayagraj, where two different families and two elderly brahmacharinis have settled. Mataji, in 2008, Mataji announced her self-appointment as a leader, as a female Shankaracharya, via the local and regional Hindi language news and print media. Prior to this, she had sought ordination as a Mahamandaleshwar through another akhada led by a high-ranking guru. However, she declined to complete the ritual because she could not accept the terms of the order. She felt that its practices would subvert her leadership power and thwart her stated mission to create an authentic akhada culture that provides equal opportunities to female monastics to develop their talents. The news of her self-appointment came a month after the Kumbh Mela in Prayagraj in 2007. Mataji said she had a mystical vision in which the deities Durga and Shiva appeared to her as though flashes of lightning, and they told her that she would be the female Shankaracharya of India. It occurred during the annual Magh Mela, January through February festival in Prayagraj, while she was putting up the signboard to her camp. Mataji interpreted her vision to mean that it was an ordination performed by the gods, which thus invested her with the status of Shankaracharya and installed her in the office. Her visionary experience provides an alternative form of Diksha for Mataji's authority. Although the gods that Mataji recognizes in her visions represent pan-Indian deities, she perceives her power to have been bestowed upon her by deities linked to a specific region of India. In her case, the Triveni Sangam. Mataji associates her power with the regional form of Shiva, called Sarveshwar Mahadev, and with the localized river goddesses Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati, which personify the Sangam. This explains why Mataji has established herself in Prayagraj and why she has named her center and order the Sarveshwar Mahadev Triveni Prayaga Peeth. The word Peeth, or Pita, translates as place of power. She has declared her seat of power to be in Prayagraj to show that her alternative authority as a female Shankaracharya in India is tied to Prayagraj, and it has been bestowed upon her by the gods of Prayagraj. They have authorized Mataji to become a female leader in a precise location, which has enabled her to organize an ascetic order which parallels the male tradition. Our second claimant, Swamini, lives in Gauriganj, Nepal. Born in 1975 in Birgunj, Swamini comes from a professional family in a dominant caste. She is the only child of her parents. Her father worked as a labor commissioner in the local magistrate's court, and her mother taught in a public school. Based on the online material that I have studied, Swamini has graceful mannerisms and exudes a sense of calm and clarity while maintaining a laser-sharp focus on the conversation in which she participates. She is knowledgeable about the Hindu tradition, citing various texts and passages. Judging from the digital collection of interviews given by her, Swamini is well regarded in Nepal, India, and Hungary. She listens to her interlocutors and responds thoughtfully to their questions. She extends kindness to the people whom she meets, is attentive to others, and has a gentle demeanor. Her social interactions affirm a sense of common humanity, and they emphasize the importance of selfless service, seva. She wears flowing robes dyed in bright orange, which she wraps around herself, and paints a large round dot, bindu, on her forehead to signify her spiritual power. During the process of observing her interviews, I found Swamini's music video professionally produced, in which she constructs the Shankaracharya identity around the roles of healer, activist, teacher, and peacemaker. She calls herself a priest of world peace. Using similar methods to Mataji, Swamini made her leadership role publicly known in 2018 via the regional news and print media. This occurred after she lost her bid for the Shankaracharya candidacy that same year and before the Kumbh Mela of 2019 took place in Prayagraj. Swamini was one of 4 candidates and the only woman nominated to become part of the mainstream tradition. If chosen, she would become the next Shankaracharya and the first female leader of the Jyotir monastery in Badrinath, India. The center was involved in a prolonged legal dispute between 2 Shankaracharyas, namely the late Swami Swarupananda Saraswati, who passed away on September 11, 2022, and Swami Vasudevananda Saraswati. Following the Allahabad High Court's decision in 2017, which ordered the established leaders to select a new Shankaracharya for the Jyotir monastery, Swamini was nominated for the role. Despite the backing of some high-profile male gurus who take part in the conventional system, including Swami Vasudevananda Saraswati, and despite receiving an endorsement from a puissant akhara with significant qualifications, the all-male organizations known as the Vidvat Kashi Parishad and the Bharat Dharma Mahamandal, which consist of Brahmin Sanskrit scholars, rejected her nomination. Swami Swarupananda Saraswati once again assumed control of the leadership role. In the year that she announced her candidacy, Swamini identified Swami Vasudeva Nanda Saraswati as her Diksha Guru, who initiated her into sannyas. However, following her self-appointment into a leadership role, the terms of their relationship have become ambiguous. She has not mentioned the Guru's name since she has been in her new role. Despite this, significantly, Swamini has established herself in Nepal. Now, I note here that the Shankaracharya monastic tradition is specific to India. So she announced her new leadership role from Nepal, and she leads from an unaffiliated center, which means the leaders do not recognize her center as being part of their monastic system. Swamini validates her authority by calling on the blessings of Pashupatinath, which is a form of Shiva popular in Nepal that is associated with Hindu ascetic culture and symbolizes the practice of sannyas. Now, she suggests that the god has ordained her to lead from Nepal, although she doesn't claim to have Diksha through visions. Swamini has named the center she leads as the Pashupatinath Peeth, which is not to be confused with the Pashupatinath temple, thus aligning her power with this god. Her leadership role is conducted outside of mainstream religious practice. As with Mataji, her role is rendered legitimate through the power of a god that is connected to a place. In addition to male deities, both gurus view themselves as empowered by the goddess Durga, who has given them the status of a female Shankaracharya. A martial goddess, Durga is widely popular in South Asian Hinduism. Based on her mythology, which is featured in Hindu literary texts such as the Devi Mahatmya and the Devi Bhagavata Purana, but also retold in countless oral traditions, Durga destroys the demons that threaten the cosmic order. She protects the world from evil and restores balance. Hindu goddess traditions such as Shaktism and Tantric Shaktism imagine Durga as the great goddess or Devi. She is the supreme female, the universal power of life, and the divine mother. She creates and sustains the world which is associated with her, but she also transcends it. She is both part of and beyond material reality. In the practice of their religion, Mataji and Swamini invoke Durga's martial symbolism to justify their authority outside the monastic mainstream. Drawing upon the trope of the Shankaracharya as the leader of the Hindu religion, which is a representation with roots in the martial history of Hindu monastic orders in colonial India, the gurus construct themselves as leaders of female armies which strive for equality. By comparing themselves with Durga, the gurus claim to have received the power of the goddess that enables them to trounce the forces of patriarchy and misogyny, and to realign the balance of power by installing women as monastic leaders. They do not see their leadership as violating the principles of the Hindu religion, but as restoring the exalted status of women revealed to them by the goddess Durga. To be clear, although the gurus hold the same title, they lead separate women's orders from different monastic centers, and each woman claims to be the first female Shankaracharya of the Hindu tradition. As Shankaracharyas, Mataji and Swamini occupy the highest position of authority within a Shaiva-centered Hindu monastic tradition that dates back 1200 years, beginning with the first lineage guru, Adi Shankaracharya. In this respect, female gurus who claim the status for themselves appropriate a traditionally male category of monastic authority, hitherto available only to qualifying high caste Brahmin men. This is because the system is structured as a hereditary priesthood. The founder, Adi Shankaracharya, led his followers using the power of his personality, that is, charisma, whereas Shankaracharyas today lead by using the power of their office. Male Shankaracharyas are appointed by others. They are not called to the role as the women are, and they do not appoint themselves. By limiting who can inherit the role, mainstream traditions have thus construed high caste male authority as institutionally normative. In this regard, the radical authority which Mataji and Swamini assume and the weight and importance of the status that they have claimed, okay, become clear. As Shankaracharyas, the gurus formalize women's legitimacy, which means the right to influence others, as they are at the top of a structure with a titled position. And thus they have the ability to raise the status of women and render women's authority institutionally normative. As they are bypassing the restrictions of the mainstream tradition, the gurus implement a new institutional normativity that reveals how they are using their newfound status as promulgators of feminist-leaning ideas for Hindu morality and feminine virtue. In religion, proximity to the divine has been a catalyst for new revelations and ways of attaining truth. Mataji's and Swamini's leadership asserts an alternative narrative for women's monastic authority, wherein it is institutionally normative. Now, regarding mainstream practices, their female authority proffers a gendered alternative. Indeed, their leadership is based specifically on charisma. Catherine Wessinger's sociological model defines charisma as the qualities of holiness and enlightened consciousness, which are either claimed by leaders or those qualities are ascribed to them by their followers. As charismatic gurus, Mataji and Swamini lead by the power of their personalities. By appointing themselves as leaders, the gurus endeavor to confront the problem of high caste male privilege within the established system, dismantle dominant hierarchies that disenfranchise minorities, and alter prevailing attitudes and customs that condition women and oppressed identities to be subordinate. Their leadership as female Shankaracharyas distinguishes them from other gurus, thus ensuring that their feminine gender comprises a new element of this religious tradition. Women's presence in authoritative roles is vital to troubling the dominant narrative of religious patriarchy that, at the time of my research, continues to deny women authority. At the same time, it is integral to altering access points within the religious hierarchy of monastic institutions that have long been resistant to change. Let us now return to the question posed earlier in the presentation. How does charisma, in the context, as I said, of personal revelatory experience, how does charisma influence the gurus to resist and even defy worldviews invested with absolute status? This question becomes more pronounced considering the nature of charisma. As Weber argued in The Sociology of Religion, charisma may be the source of religious insight, inspiration, and powerful gifts of the spirit. However, it is also unstable. Charisma must be constituted through the personality, experiences, actions, and missions of the leaders so that their followers continue to believe in them. This aspect of charisma poses a problem for charismatic leaders, and especially female gurus occupying positions of power and authority. This is because they are historically associated with men, and they inhabit religious cultures which socialize women to be humble and obedient. Data collected through ethnographic observations and from the gurus' social media platforms, particularly their teachings captured on video, suggest that the answer to our question lies in the psychophysiological states that the gurus associate with their charismatic experiences. On the one hand, they emphasize charisma and revelation as the central source of their specialized knowledge. On the other hand, they also speak about how they feel in their hearts and bodies during an experience. They describe charisma traveling down to the bone, touching the deep structures of the mind and the body. It generates an experience that is as affective as it is transformative. Along with their visions, dreams, auditory revelations, and so on, they experience intense feelings, emotions, memories, sensations, and perceptions that profoundly reorient their moral sensibilities and their relationship to the worlds they live in. In other words, charisma occurs simultaneously with affectivity. Both components engender enlightened consciousness, and they impress and solidify dispositions within the mind-body complex. It is in part through affect that the gurus have learned what being Hindu and feminist mean at the bodily level. By approaching the study of gurus and charismatic authority through the lens of affectivity, my work follows Robert Orsi's study that in that something called religion, this is his quote from his work, something called religion cannot be neatly separated from the other practices of everyday life, from the way that human beings work on the landscape, for instance, or dispose of corpses, or arrange for the security of their offspring. Nor can religion be separated from the material circumstances in which specific instances of religious imagination and behavior arise and to which they respond. End quote. As the gurus accentuate the attainment of self-realization to enhance religious authority, this presentation explores their descriptions of revelatory experience in great detail, and it examines its implications for women's leadership roles. My work builds on the arguments of the historian of religion, Karen Pachillis, with regard to ideas of revelation as self-realization and the female guru as being universal. I contend that the gurus, as self-styled Shankaracharyas, construct their alternative authority by emphasizing two interrelated themes. These concern the immediacy of the personal realization of the Atma, or the self, the indestructible self, the universal consciousness, Brahman, or the truth, Brahmagyan. And they emphasize the potency of affect as sources of revelation, upon which basis they align Hindu teachings with their assertion of normative rights. Their emphasis on being divine messengers places the guru's alternative authority in a Hindu moral framework to motivate society and mobilize change. Let us now turn our attention to their teachings to acquire a better sense of the role of charismatic influence on women's monastic lives. One of the ways in which the gurus establish their charismatic authority concerns their narrative representations of themselves as self-realized God women. In 2019, I returned to Prayagraj to work with Mataji during the Kumbh Mela. One evening, while we waited for a journalist from Mumbai to arrive at her temple for an interview, I asked Mataji to talk about her leadership role. I wanted to know the categories she uses to interpret herself. Does she view herself as an activist, healer, reformer, feminist? Mataji responded by describing herself as absorbed in Brahman consciousness, immersed in the emotion or bhav of Shiva, or whom she referred to as Parampita Parameshwar, integrated with the cosmos and nature and connected to all the gods and the Atma. These are her words. I cannot explain what I think of myself. There are no words, no pictures that can explain what I am. Everything that is present in the universe, I see myself like that. So God, Parameshwar, has given me the opportunity to attain God knowledge, Brahmagyan. And through that knowledge, I have become God. Everything is in me. Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, all are in me. And I am in everything. Like the whole universe came out of God, I think of myself like that. I am a single one, but you can put any number of zeros after one. We're all from one world, and I want to make one world where there is no differentiation. I talk of equality, the word she uses is samanta, as we are all born from God, and we all have God in ourselves. We are all equal. Changing the religion is a big work, and it will take time. I am like a small bulb that lights up the whole room. I am the sun behind the clouds, and when they disappear, I will shine. Similarly, Swamini talks about realizing God consciousness to assert her charismatic authority in the wider male-dominated monastic culture that does not recognize it. In the interviews that she gives, she emphasizes that she has mixed, those are her terms, her consciousness with that of the universal absolute, united, again her terms, her mind and body with the supreme being, Pashupatinath, and integrated, her terms, herself with the world. In 2018, Swamini told a Nepali TV journalist the following: life is all about peace and happiness. Life is an opportunity. God has sent the world a messenger in Nepal looking for the betterment of life. I am working for the revival of self-power among the people of Nepal. Spiritual power provides us with self-power, improves confidence, and makes us peaceful and better people. I am the Brahman. I am the consciousness of the universe, and I am the one who is leading the world by integrating with it. Hindu religion believes in inclusiveness. The word she uses is samavesh. I am starting a movement for inclusiveness of everyone. We have to make everyone equal by seeing and treating them as equal. We created so many castes in our religion because of wrong knowledge. I have realized the truth that God created humans as equal. God came in the human form to this earth. So for me, everyone is equal. Everyone is a messenger of God. Everyone in my ashram recites the Gayatri mantra, which is a Vedic prayer. Women and men from oppressed castes, this is Swamini speaking still, women and men from oppressed castes recite it with me. We perform Vedic rituals together. I have opened the door for everyone to participate in the practices of the Hindu religion. Discrimination based on caste and sex is totally wrong. We must make our thoughts and behaviors pure by seeing and treating everyone as equal. Both gurus represent their God consciousness, their realization of God consciousness, as being akin to an integrative state. Charismatic experience creates the feeling of becoming mixed with and absorbed into the inner self, Atma, the supreme self, Brahman, and the universe, the Brahmand. Attaining self-realization is not only synonymous with receiving knowledge from the Atma and the Brahman, as it also induces the bodily experience of God presence. Each guru says that she sees, hears, feels, smells, touches, and tastes the truth revealed by the Brahman. In particular, Mataji's narratives relate God consciousness to a religious mood or a mahabhav. She suggests that God is sensed as and through religious emotion, and experiencing God produces the intensification of feeling in two respects. The emotions are stronger, and her sensitivity to emotions is improved. Self realization is therefore not disembodied, absent of pathos, or dissociative, meaning a break from reality, to these gurus, but rather it embodies God as they feel intertwined with everything in existence. Another way for the gurus to construct their charismatic authority involves linking God consciousness with the potency of affect to emphasize the efficacy of revelation. What happens to the guru's bodies during revelatory experience alters their perceptions of themselves, the world, and their relationship to it. They say that the revelation occurs through the Atma and is situational, meaning that the revelation speaks directly to the circumstances of the context of the initial delivery. Affect, then, is conjoined with revelation, and it impacts how the gurus learn and embody what being Hindu means. Both gurus talk a great deal about the sensations they experience through revelation. During our meetings, Mataji said that she heard the voice of the Atma speaking to her through the heart mind. As she explained, the heart mind represents the center of spiritual energy in the chest area that receives messages from the Atma and sends them to the mind body system. The voice heard from within told Mataji that, quote, God created men and women as equals, end quote. When the Atma speaks to her, other sensations come into her consciousness and provide a coordinate source of information for interpreting the revelation. When physically sensing the Atma, her body responds by producing different sensations, such as the feeling of heat in the chest, which she perceives as the heart melting with love, all over tingling or paresthesia, and buoyancy, feeling as light as a feather. These reactions are temporary, lasting only a few minutes, though they are significant. Mataji perceives them as not only being soul signals, but as bodily confirmation that the experience is real. This is why I had mentioned earlier the efficacy of the revelation based on these kinds of sensations or affectivity. The efficacy of charismatic experience is borne out in the body so that it authenticates the revelation. Mataji says that her revelations fill her whole being with a sense of inner peace, happiness, and security. Affect arouses awareness of her intrinsic goodness and dignity, of belonging to God and the world, and of the female sadhu as normative to the male sadhu. This is considered to be a normative experience. This experience becomes the basis for Mataji's construction of equality as the female birthright, and it justifies the idea that it is a fundamentally Hindu concept. So Mataji's narrative representations suggest that the revelation is transmitted through affect. Sensory experience grounds the revelation in her body as physical proof of the immediacy of charisma, while generating inner spiritual potency as darshan. That is, she has a visionary experience of God and attains divine universal consciousness. Aside from sensory experience, the emotions associated with integrative states confirm that the guru's attainment of Hindu truth is congruent with rights-based values. Mataji emphasizes love through the performance of revelation. She describes love as a feeling in which her mind, body consciousness expands beyond the limits of ordinary subjectivity and mixes with the universe. Love realized as God consciousness is simultaneously a sensational, emotional, bodily, and spiritual experience. For her, it brings a sense of permeability. Every part of her being, from her toes to her and fingers to her legs and arms to her eyelashes and the hair on her head, absorbs the elements of the world around her. It is a feeling of expansion and fusion, of joining with God and the entirety of the cosmos. Her experience of the intrinsic permeability of the material self, meaning the individual, rouses sensations of becoming fluid, akin to water, and of becoming infinite, akin to the cosmos. In effect, it strengthens her belief that we are all equal. For Mataji, feeling love heightens her awareness that she is essentially everything, and vice versa. It stimulates her personal consciousness of the permeability of the material world, and it reveals the knowledge that everything in existence is fundamentally interconnected. Emotions, such as love, have spiritual potency because through them, Mataji experiences the revelation that she is the world she inhabits, and that she consists of the same material and spiritual components that comprise interdependent life. Furthermore, the immediacy of the permeability of material existence enables her to refute religious practices or refute religious patriarchal ideals and patriarchal practices of male superiority and female inferiority. It shows her that as all life is permeable and divisible, men and women share the same normative status. As they are composed of the same elements, they share a common humanity and are inherently equal. Swamini emphasizes a related conception of integrative awareness based on her experiential understanding of the material self as permeable and of life as interconnected. She links enlightened consciousness with the attitude of positivity. Her idea of positivity is consonant with Mataji's principle of love. In Swamini's theology, positivity comprises a cluster of religious emotions, such as love, happiness, peace, and care for others. It compels her to reach out and lift others up, encouraging people by instilling in them a sense of confidence, capability, bravery, and purpose. In her experience of positivity, Swamini indicated feeling as though her material self becomes less solid, meaning she perceives herself as having disintegrated into the elements of air, fire, water, earth, and ether. That is, that she integrated with others and then she was absorbed into herself. I'll read that sentence again. Swamini indicated feeling as though her material self became less solid, that she integrated with others, and then she was reabsorbed into herself. The experience activated her realization that people share parts of their being while simultaneously incorporating others into themselves. To Swamini, this is what it means to be alive, to be present for the reality of life, which is interconnected. Swamini credits nature with revealing this insight to her. She envisions nature as the goddess Prakriti, who in Hindu theologies such as Sankhya and Yoga represents the divine principle of materiality, meaning that material existence comprises 5 elements, And being permeable, they're always in flux. Nature comprises both the material world and a divine female in Swamini's theology. In accordance with her reasoning, if the goddess exists as the world that she permeates with her power, then she can show herself in the materiality of life, including feelings, emotions, and sensations. Now, I would argue that Swamini encounters goddess presence via the potency of affect. The goddess, as nature, appears and reveals information to Swamini through a confluence of emotions and sensations. In this sense, she learns that everyone is essentially connected and that they share in each other's humanity. One's humanity is measured by experiencing others' humanity, which comprises their own. I interpret Swamini's statements to mean that, quote, we are all one and, quote, we are all the same in this way. She equates equality and inclusiveness with the status of religious truths, thereby constructing them as spiritually potent and based on the immediacy of bodily experiences. Spiritual efficacy of these ideals manifests in the body, as Swamini said. When I was 13 years old, Nepali Baba Jagatacharya started his Nepal Yatra, and my mother and me were part of that trip. We traveled to 75 districts and visited more than 10,000 temples. I got the opportunity to taste water and food from all 75 of these districts. In the past, in the Hindu religion, everyone used to drink from the same well. There was no caste, jati, or class, varna divisions. We have lost our culture and the distinction of being a world teacher, Vishvaguru, because of the discrimination that we have created between ourselves. What we see today is people fighting with each other over petty issues. We are seeing an increase in corruption, pollution, all sorts of problems, and negative thoughts. This is depleting our power, energy, and bravery. The problem that we are facing today in Nepal is mostly because of the lack of respect for women. We are not giving them proper opportunities. We should respect women and woman power if we want to be a great country. But we have lost self-power. We have forgotten the principles of Dharma. Swamini, through her narrative telling, performs acts relating to the materiality of enlightenment by calling attention to her personal realization that the universe is permeable and interconnected. She indicates that the spiritual potency of everyday material acts, such as religious journeying on foot and eating and drinking water with people whom she meets, are sources of revelation. However, quotidian practices not only reveal penetrating insight into the natural world, significantly, they motivate Swamini's religious feminist engagement with it. Struck by an acute fever of emotions, she feels moved to embrace others, affirm dignity, respect their natural birthright, and heal the festering wounds of discrimination, exploitation, and oppression caused by ascribed social differences. Swamini and Mataji suggest that the immediacy of self-realization impacts the deep structures of the mind and the body. Mataji emphasizes the statement, quote, absorbing the truth, end quote. It details a prominent material metaphor for her personal realization of God in her narratives. In this respect, the materiality of God consciousness is suggested by her comment, quote, "I have absorbed the truth," end quote. This separates Mataji from the mainstream Shankaracharyas who, as she says, quote, "only cram the Vedas in their heads without embodying it in their character," end quote. This emphasis constructs her status as the real Shankaracharya. However, a further implication concerns the fact that the revelation impacts Mataji at the cellular level. Every molecule of her body is touched by the self-realization of the Brahman, such that she feels that she, quote, "eats God, tastes God, smells God, and sees God." In 2018, Mataji told me, spirituality, which is called religion, it means that you superimpose the truth on yourself. It means to speak the truth, to eat the truth, to wear the truth, to live in an environment of truth, to walk on the path of truth, and to guide others about the truth, to give one the right direction. I felt it. I am the original Shankaracharya. Only the person who has absorbed the truth can be called a Shankaracharya. End of her narrative. Both gurus underscore that personal transformation is a direct function of affect. For Swamini, affect emerges through the emotion of positivity, and for Mataji, she feels love. These emotions are activated through revelation. It transforms them spiritually, emotionally, and physically, shifting their perceptions from ignorance to wisdom and restoring their bodies from sickness to health. By performing charisma, that's what I'm arguing, performing charisma, performing revelation through these kinds of narrative tellings. By performing charisma, the gurus engender a correlation between the spiritual and the material. To conclude, this presentation has shown the impact of personal charisma on modern women's monastic lives through an analysis of the revelatory experiences of two self-styled female Shankaracharyas. Motivated by their revelations and the universal problem of suffering, these gurus have organized grassroots women's liberation movements comprising people across social identities to uproot patriarchal mentalities regarding female sadhus' inferiority and to change the monastic culture. We have seen the tangible effects of charismatic authority in terms of how they have established separate monastic lineages for women in India, such as Mataji, and Nepal, such for Swamini. They have established these lineages in order to give female sadhus, many of whom come from disadvantaged backgrounds, a female identified place away from the male gaze, where they can be nurtured, learn skills, imbibe ideas beneficial to their well-being, and develop their full potential because they are women. Their establishment of female-led traditions not only asserts the primacy of women, but it also constructs women's monastic authority as institutionally normative. These forward-facing gurus combine modernist ideals with Hindu religious worldviews in order to enhance women's fundamental rights in relation to equality of opportunity and freedom from sex and caste discrimination. At the same time, they raise awareness of the struggles of female sadhus within the male-dominated hierarchy of Hindu monastic orders. Although their orders are separate from the male-led system, female-led traditions may impact traditional conceptions of holiness and power, thus potentially opening doors for women in the future. Whether in person or via social media, The Shankaracharyas are mobilizing a new institutional normativity that shatters the glass ceiling of authorized religious power and which elevates women's status, thus affecting seismic cultural shifts. Their lives, teachings, and activism provide an alternate world for women and girls who decide to fly from the cage from the cage of patriarchal traditions toward a promising horizon of female achievement, which can be obtained through the leadership of two indefatigable gurus who are devoted to achieving that outcome. While their inversion of power dynamics is not equivalent to transforming patriarchal monastic society, as the latter would require abolishing hierarchies rather than reversing the status of dominant and oppressed groups, the move is consequential nonetheless, bringing women closer to achieving complete humanity and securing hopeful futures.
Thank you very much. That was a great,
Stand.
wonderful talk. Super insightful. And I've invited our attendees to ask any questions. They can unmute themselves and ask directly. They can also type in chat window if they prefer. But I think we learned a lot. I had no clue myself that there are already female, we were at the verge of getting first female Shankaracharya in the history of this Dashnami Sampradaya, Dashnami Parampara that Adi Shankaracharya established. I had no clue. When did that happen? Very recently, right? When this claim to female Shankaracharya was.
So for Mataji, her claim began in 2008, and it happened following the 2007 Kumbh Mela that was held in Prayagraj. So her first claim that she is the new female Shankaracharya, the first female Shankaracharya of the Hindu tradition. That happened in 2008. With Swamini, it happened 10 years later. And her explicit representation of herself as, again, she says, the first female Shankaracharya of the Hindu tradition happened after she lost the nomination to become the first female Shankaracharya of the Jyotir monastery. So she was nominated by some very high-ranking gurus, she has the support of Vasudevananda Saraswati, who is claiming to be the Shankaracharya of the Jyotir monastery, but he was fighting for, since 1982, Swami Vasudevananda Saraswati and Swami, the late Swami Swarupananda Saraswati, they have been involved in a very prolonged legal battle for who is the real Shankaracharya.
Very unfortunate.
That's right, the Jyotir monastery. But nonetheless, when I met Swami Vasudevananda in the summer of 2018, and he was there with his lawyers and his team, and he said, "Look, these are my papers." He showed me his papers of the guru saying that he would be the successor. So, but nonetheless, the Allahabad High Court ruled that no, there's got to be a woman or somebody else ruling. You can't have, because Swarupananda was still the Shankaracharya of Dwarka, the Shardamata. So how can he rule two of them? So the Allahabad High Court says you got to find somebody else for the Jyotir monastery. So, being Vasudevananda's Chela disciple, Swamini was nominated for the role, but even then she lost it.
She lost. We have a question from Dr. Garima Yadav. You can unmute yourself and you can ask directly, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. DeNapoli, for this informative presentation. I'm curious, maybe I missed, but I want to know whether the caste identity of the female guru play an important role in the charisma that is really important in this whole discourse. Because now I'm building upon that question that the followers also, play an important role in creation of the category of guru and the guruship that is created. So at times the caste identity, which is renounced to become a guru, but still it plays an important role for the followers to get attracted and to be a part of the guru movement, or to join that monastery or something like that. So if you can please shed some light on that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. It's a great question. And so Mataji comes from a subordinated caste, and I would say that has been the flame, no pun intended, the flame that has really ignited this self-realization of how the entrenched inequities within Hindu monastic structures. And it's also been the reason why the established leaders within the conventional system have refused to sanction this idea. And sometimes it feels like they're open to the idea of a female Shankaracharya, but not this one, because she comes from a subordinated caste. Because the Shankaracharya lineage, that is really in many ways paralleling the hereditary priesthood that is a characteristic of Brahminical Hinduism. Now, here's where it becomes a bit confusing, because Swamini comes from a dominant caste. So she is a Brahmin. She comes from a Brahmin family. And so when some leaders from the established tradition are looking to delegitimize her claims, they will bring up the idea that she was married. So they don't mention caste, but they will mention that she was previously married, as was Mataji. But the phenomenon of a Shankaracharya, really, ideally the Shankaracharya within the male lineage is a Bal Brahmachari. From childhood, they've been celibate. However, in the history of the Shankaracharya tradition, particularly with the Puri Mat, and the Puri Pitam, yes, there has been a Shankaracharya who was married, who became established on the throne, and then he became the sannyas. So, but when it comes to, because when you think of how these gurus, these female gurus, are influencing their followers, their leaders, and really just as diverse an audience as they can, because a lot of what they're doing is being put on social media, that their followers, for Mataji, I've met Brahmins, I've met Rajputs, I have met Baniyas, I have met Dalits, I have met people across the caste tradition. And what is more, in Mataji's case, some of her most devout followers are not Hindu. They're Muslim. They're Muslims. They're Christians. I met a Christian nun, originally from South India, but she was posted at a church in Prayagraj, and she was a big supporter of Mataji, because even she was facing similar institutional inequities in her community, in her church, and she was seeking greater opportunities for women to use their potential. These female Shankaracharyas are not arguing that this is what all women need to be doing. No, they're not saying that at all. I mean, they still talk about dharma as, people are expected to fulfill certain duties. However, in those cases where women feel this extraordinary pull toward the sacred, where they feel this extraordinary pull to serve the world, and they have the talents to do it, why are they being stopped? And why are these arguments that, being used to prevent them from achieving these leadership positions that, as Swamini and both Mataji suggest in their interviews, could really increase people's participation within the movements? So both women, to answer your question, they have growing, sizable communities that support them. With Swamini, it seems that her community, I've never worked with her. My ethnographic work is with Mataji. So what I have been able to argue about Swamini's leadership is based on my translation and analysis of her interviews online. So,
Your
but
primary
her,
work is in Prayagraj in India, not in Nepal, right?
right,
Right.
exactly. My work is in India and Prayagraj. So, but her community seems also to cross-cut caste identities and caste status. So, I would say caste is a huge element because here, let's say it this way. When we talk about gender in religion, any religion, we're not just talking about gender. In Indic context, we're talking about, because gender doesn't exist by itself. Gender exists along with a person's class status, caste identity, sexual identity, linguistic identity. There are all these layers.
Intersectional, right? Intersectional.
Yes, absolutely. Intersectional. I mean, intersectional approaches is looking at, okay, so how can we nuance our understanding of the role of religion or the role of women's leadership in religions when we can see how gender identity intersects with all these sort of equally significant constituents of social identity. So yeah.
Great. I'm glad, really pleased to see my professor, Frederick Smith, has also joined from University of Iowa. Probably now he's in New Mexico. But any questions, sir, or anybody else, attendees, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask her directly, or you can chat. You can type in the chat window. And I had no clue of so many things that you shared. So I'm really educated better on this very important phenomenon happening right here in India and Nepal also. So who do you think has larger following right now in India or in Nepal? So Nepal is the Swamini, India is Prayagraj is Mataji, right?
That's right. That is correct.
So which one has larger following?
I would say, just judging from the number of ashrams and I would say Swamini at this point, because, okay, so Swamini has...
Swamini, that is in Nepal, right?
In Nepal. Okay. Swamini has an ashram with like over 300 acres of land where she served and it's an ashram that she's heading, and it was her guru's ashram. So the guru passed the mantle onto her, and she's become the Pitadishwar of this ashram.
Is it near Kathmandu? Where exactly from Kathmandu?
In Gauriganj. In Gauriganj. That's where her yes, that's where her ashram is. But here's the thing. Swamini is also a Mahamandaleshwar in the Juna Akhada. Juna Akhada. So she also runs 5 different ashrams or temples in India. So she has
living in Nepal, she's running 5 ashrams in India. Okay.
In India, that's right, because as a Mahamandaleshwar, she has been a Sri Mahant. She was elected Sri Mahant. She became a Mahamandaleshwar with the Juna Akhada, and so she's leading these different temples and ashrams, and so she's building her constituency from 2 different places.
So we have one more question from Dr. Yadav. Please ask directly.
Yes. So,
you read the question? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, you have read it. Okay.
I have read the question. So that's absolutely. My work talks about this. And the talk that I gave today is actually based on an article that's going to be published in the co-edited volume that I'm doing with my colleague Jung McDaniels. That's part of this special issue with religions, gurus, priestesses, saints, mediums, yoginis, holy women as influencers and Hindu cultures. But it's also being published as a book. So so purity and pollution. Yeah, these are big ideas in the gurus' narratives, and for Mataji and Swamini, purity has to do with one's intentions. Purity has to do with one's moral state, one's awareness of the interconnectedness and permeability of all material existence. And because their revelations have enhance their awareness, their perception that like we're all commingled, we're all interconnected, that women are not intrinsically impure or more polluted than men simply because of their menstrual cycles. As a matter of fact, what I have seen in Mataji's case specifically is that she will draw on the idea of the goddess, the menstruating goddess, particularly using the example of the goddess tradition of at Guwahati in Assam, and saying that, you know, the goddess menstruates, the goddess bleeds, and this is how she, this is our sort of physiological, biological connection to the goddess. And women are the creators of life. Like life begins in their bodies, and so the menstrual blood is that signifier of women's deep power and connection to sort of just this dynamic creativity, generativity of life itself. So they are actually flipping this whole notion of contagion that is implicit in ideas of ritual purity and pollution on its head, to emphasize moral purity as opposed to bodily or ritual purity. So this is where we see the inversion of values, the inversion of Brahminical, I would say dominant Brahminical values with regard to caste, with regard to gender relations, with regard to ritual purity, inverting it to emphasize moral purity, the awareness of everybody's equality as human beings, the inherent dignity, the intrinsic worthiness of all human beings. And this is how they are weaving their arguments around this notion of female sadhus being normative to the male sadhus, because inherently, if everybody's absorbing qualities of each other, then we're all connected and we're all inherently, intrinsically at the material level equal.
Great. I typed one more question also from my side. Speaking of yoginis, right? Do they refer to the various yogini temples spread across India? Also, do they make references to great female names such as Gargi, Maitreyi in the Vedas?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the arguments that they make, because some of their critics are from the beginning of Mataji's, Mataji's claiming herself a female Shankaracharya in 2008. It wasn't highly publicized in the way that her creation of a women's akara, Pariakara, was in 2014. I mean, she had regional, local news stations and it just covering this. And so it got so much attention, so much coverage. And so what that did was it really just sort of gave the mainstream leaders a reason to critique her, to shoot her down. And so the idea was that she's not a real guru. And so she has been fighting against that. And so she's using media and so on and so forth to fight against that. And what was the last part of your question, Pankaj?
Maitreyi and Gargi mentioned in Upanishads and Vedas.
Oh yeah. She absolutely mentions them.
Okay.
I was going to say something else, but it escaped my mind.
Even do they make references to figures such as Mirabai, and of course the goddess tradition of Durga and Saraswati Lakshmi? So I'm sure they make reference to all of those.
I haven't heard Mirabai referenced as much as I hear Gargi, Maitreyi. So this is what I was going to say. So both of the gurus, they are claiming that India's history of the female Shankaracharya, or the female priestess, the female religious authority, the woman with incredible, extraordinary gifts and religious authority, is an ancient tradition. There's an ancient lineage. They use the words Vidushi. They talk about the Vedic lineage, Vedic traditions of these women that have been suppressed, but they haven't been exterminated. So they say, their critics want to argue that these women are defying tradition. They are defining Hindu Sanatana Dharma. Okay, and that's such an ambiguous and big concept. It's not clear what people mean by it when they're using the very concept. However, these gurus say, no, we are not defying tradition. We're actually, in their words, revamping. We are, bringing our traditions back. You are the patriarchy, the religious patriarchy is the one that has defied the principles of the tradition. And so we are just, bringing back the glory of women that has been suppressed by this patriarchy. So that's what they are saying.
So we are bringing back the original Sanatan then? Are they saying that? Or
Yes,
are we reforming it? So it's revival, not reforming.
Bringing it back, but reforming it with respect to how to understand these sort of categories of caste, these categories of gender, because even though the gurus are teaching that women and men are inherently, ontologically speaking, the same, they don't say that women are and men are the same. That just wouldn't make sense to them. So it's a question of how do they reconfigure notions of gender difference, notions of caste difference in ways that align with the revelations that they say that they have. And so they see themselves as really aligned with what they would call like the original revelation that was given to, let's say, Adi Shankaracharya and so on and so forth. And I said, I had asked Mataji, if Adi Shankaracharya, if he was an enlightened being, why didn't he also put women on the throne, so to speak? Which is a very similar question that has been asked of the Buddha, right? If he was enlightened, why didn't he allow? And there's all these different stories around it. But she said that, well, let's put it this way. He didn't prohibit women. There's a constitution, the Mat Amnaya, within the Shankaracharya lineage. And it has like all the rules and procedures. And she said there, you'll notice that it doesn't prohibit women from accessing the seat of power. And she will say, well, every person is a product of their time. So he was enlightened, but he was enlightened
hold on 1 second.
to a degree.
Let me just turn something off that I'm listening to here. Yes. Is this Mark? Yeah, it sounded like you. Yeah.
Hello?
Hey, what's happening?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry. Yes.
So,
prohibit, like you were saying, yeah. Right. So females could still access the power, yeah. I was aware of the fringe movement, such as, different female spiritual leaders in Hindu tradition recently, in the last 50 years, there have been so many, but you brought out some really, almost mainstream, she almost became Shankaracharya. That is really, that's really amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you have one of the biggest questions that I get is, why the Shankaracharya leadership role? Why that role? I mean, you have women. There are a number of female gurus who are not claiming themselves Shankaracharyas and really have no intention or desire.
Even Shardama, after Ramakrishna Paramahansa passed away, Shardama was pretty much leading the whole Ramakrishna movement, right? I think she was one of the first, probably the first female guru after Ramakrishna Paramahansa. But that was far cry from claiming Shankaracharyahood.
That's a very different tradition. Right. And so why is it that these women are claiming this status when it's not necessary in order for women to exercise authority, to create traditions that are providing equal opportunities or greater opportunities for women's learning, education, freedom, ritual roles. So why the Shankaracharya role? And I believe it has to do with reordering the monastic structures, because monasticism in Hindu culture is, it has a lot of symbolic as well as cultural significance. And the Shankaracharyas, as these leaders of the army, as the chiefs, the history is rich, but also the symbolism goes back to like this erstwhile, the rulership. These Shankaracharyas are like the religious rulers. And who sits on the throne? That in and of itself becomes a symbolic way of communicating, who has the right to lead?
Yeah.
Who has the right to be at the head of the army, at the head of the people, at the head of the nation? And so both of the gurus are saying, look, you have women who gave birth to these Shankaracharyas. So why can't they be a Shankaracharya? Using that physiological female difference with respect to menstruation, with respect to capacities for childbirth and procreation, to argue women need to be Shankaracharyas.
What about
They're
the
the-
Kumbh Mela? Do they come at Kumbh Mela and participate during the Kumbh Mela?
I'm
The
sorry?
Kumbh Mela at Prayagraj?
Yes.
They come and
Yes.
participate? Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
Okay.
BBC has a very short interview of Swamini, and I'm actually in that interview because I was interviewing. I'm not speaking. I mean, I'm just at a camp. I'm at another female guru's camp, whom I didn't talk about today. It's Anandmai Puri, and she had established a women power camp. So I spent time with her at the 2019 Kumbh Mela, and little did we know that BBC India's team was there, and so they were, gathering images around the question of why is there such a dearth of female gurus, of female monastics, and women in these positions, ritual positions of power and authority. And so Swamini does speak for very briefly in that interview. And I actually talk about that interview in the article that's going to be published in this special issue and as a book that's coming out later this summer. So thank you. Thank you. Namaste.
Bye.